The silence of space was absolute, but the alien fleet moved through the darkness like silent predators. Admiral Vorin stood on the bridge of his massive warship, his cold eyes locked onto the holographic display before him. The fleet had picked up an unusual signal from an uncharted system, a strange energy signature unlike anything recorded before. It pulsed steadily, strong but controlled, as if waiting to be found. Vorin had led countless conquests across the galaxy. His fleet, the pride of the Zevran Dominion, had crushed entire civilizations, reducing their worlds to nothing but ash. He expected this to be no different. Another weak species, perhaps a pre-spacefaring one, stumbling upon something they shouldn't have. He would investigate, take what was useful, and erase the rest. "Commander," a voice interrupted his thoughts. The officer at the sensor station looked uneasy. "We have located the source of the signal." Vorin narrowed his eyes. "What do you see?" The officer hesitated. "It's not a planet. It's a ship. A single vessel." A moment of silence passed through the bridge. A lone ship. That was unexpected. The admiral stepped forward, analyzing the display. The vessel was large but not monstrous. It had no clear insignia, no markings of any known empire. Its design was strange, angular, dark, with smooth, menacing edges. It sat motionless in the void, as if daring them to come closer. "Send a scan," Vorin ordered. The fleet's advanced scanners pulsed outward, waves of energy sweeping over the unknown ship. Then, something shocking happened. The moment the scan hit the ship, it stopped. The data stream simply cut off, as if absorbed. The scanners flickered, struggling to process what had just happened. "Sir, the ship is scanning us back," the officer whispered, his voice tense. The admiral's eyes darkened. That wasn't supposed to happen. Advanced empires had countermeasures, of course, but this was something else. The ship wasn't reacting defensively. It was studying them in real time, calculating. "Open a channel," Vorin commanded. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The communication officers worked quickly, sending out a standard first contact message. The words were clear, professional, yet firm. "Unidentified vessel, you are in Zevran-controlled space. Identify yourself and your purpose." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. The ship did not move. The stars stretched endlessly behind it, cold and indifferent. Then the reply came. A deep, steady voice, strong and calm, filled the bridge. "Unidentified fleet, state your purpose." The words were simple, but the effect was immediate. The bridge crew froze. The admiral's mandibles tightened. That was not a response of fear. That was not a species that begged for mercy or scrambled for diplomacy. That was authority. The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, they're not asking who we are. They're demanding our purpose." Vorin's eyes gleamed with intrigue. He had met countless civilizations before, some proud, some foolishly brave. But this was different. There was no arrogance in the voice, no bluster. It was calm certainty. "Send another message," he said slowly. "Tell them we are investigating an unknown energy source and that they will submit to an inspection." The message was sent. The silence returned. And then, the unknown ship moved. It was not a slow, cautious maneuver. It was instant, precise. One moment, it was there. The next, it had shifted position, appearing 100 kilometers closer. Gasps filled the bridge. Even Vorin felt his pulse quicken. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice was urgent. "We didn't detect an engine burn, no propulsion trail. It just appeared there." That was impossible. No ship in the galaxy could move without propulsion, without a trace. The admiral clenched his fists. He would not be intimidated by parlor tricks. "Prepare weapons," he ordered. "Target them, but do not fire yet." The moment the fleet's targeting systems locked onto the unknown vessel, another message came through. This time, there was no delay. "Stand down, or prepare for consequences. The bridge fell into stunned silence. No posturing, no negotiations, just a cold warning. Zelvorin's mandibles curled into what could almost be called a grin. The arrogance. This lone vessel dared to issue demands to a fleet that had conquered entire worlds. He turned to his officers. They believed themselves powerful. Let's see how they handle a show of force. The fleet began shifting positions, surrounding the unknown ship in a tight formation. Massive cruisers moved into position, their weapons humming with barely contained energy. Fighters swarmed in the distance, ready to strike at the admiral's command. And yet, the mysterious ship remained still, unmoving, unshaken. For the first time in his long career, a strange thought crept into Admiral Zelvorin's mind. Are we the ones being hunted? He pushed the thought aside. Impossible. There was no species in the galaxy that could match the Zevran dominion. This would be no different from any other conquest. Final warning, he said, his voice filled with cruel confidence. If they do not surrender, we will show them what true power looks like. His crew stood ready, their claws hovering over the fire controls. Then, without a sound, without a flash, the ship vanished. It was not an explosion. It was not a retreat. It simply was not there anymore. Gasps filled the bridge. Sensors scrambled, trying to relocate the vessel. The fleet's targeting systems blinked uselessly. Where did it go? An officer shouted. Before anyone could answer, alarms blared across the entire fleet. Something was behind them. A new message came through, colder than before. Last warning. Leave now. And for the first time in his life, Admiral Zelvorin felt fear. Admiral Zelvorin's mandibles tightened as he turned toward his officers. Panic spread across the bridge like wildfire. The unknown vessel had disappeared, vanished without a trace. And now, alarms blared across the fleet. Rear sensors, find that ship, he barked. The officers scrambled to obey, their claws flying over control panels, eyes darting across flickering screens. The entire fleet had turned to surround the unknown vessel, yet now it was behind them. Impossible. The only way a ship could move that fast was through hyperspace. But no jump had been detected. No energy spike. No gravitational distortion. It had simply moved, as if the laws of physics did not apply. "Sir," one of the officers shouted, his voice shaking. "The ship is directly behind us, less than 5,000 kilometers away. It's in attack range." Zelvorin turned to the viewing screen. There it was, still motionless, still as dark and menacing as before. It had not opened fire. It had not moved aggressively, but it did not need to. Its mere presence was enough to shake the entire fleet. "Open a channel," Zelvorin commanded, keeping his voice steady. The communication officer hesitated. "Sir, what if?" "Do it." The static cleared, and once again, the deep, steady voice filled the bridge. "You were warned." Zelvorin narrowed his eyes. "You are outnumbered, unknown vessel. You may have tricks, but tricks do not win battles. This is your final chance. Identify yourself, or we will open fire." A long silence followed. Then a reply. "Try." The single word sent a shiver down the admiral's spine. It was not a threat. It was not bravado. It was a simple, undeniable statement, one spoken by a force that knew it could not be defeated. Zelvorin refused to show weakness. His fleet had conquered entire worlds, reduced civilizations to rubble. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against him. "All ships, lock weapons," he ordered. The moment he spoke, something terrifying happened. Every weapon system in the fleet went dark. Panels flickered, consoles sparked, alarms screamed across every warship. Crews panicked, slamming controls, trying to restore power. Nothing responded. "Sir," an officer shouted, "our targeting systems are offline. I don't know how. Shields are failing. A sudden jolt rocked the flagship. It wasn't a weapon impact. It wasn't an explosion. It was something else. Then, across the fleet, a new kind of terror spread. The stars had changed. Zelvorin looked at the main screen, his cold blood running colder. The fleet had been surrounded by distant stars, familiar celestial bodies marking their position in the galaxy. But now, outside their ships, the stars were wrong. Different constellations, different planets. They had moved. Not a single ship had engaged engines. No hyperspace jump had been recorded. And yet, they were no longer in the same part of the galaxy. "Sir, we are in an uncharted sector," an officer whispered in horror. Zelvorin's mind raced. How could an entire fleet, his fleet, be transported without a single ship activating its engines? No species had ever shown this kind of power. Not the Dominion, not the Galactic Council. No one. And then, another message came through. Calm. Cold. "We moved you. Do not test us again." A deep silence filled the bridge. The officers stared at the Admiral, waiting for a response. For the first time in his long, blood-stained career, Admiral Zelvorin did not know what to do. Was this some new godlike species, a race that had hidden itself until now? Or was this just one ship, a single vessel of a species that had yet to reveal its true power? The thought made him uneasy. He had been in the presence of might before. He had seen war machines capable of wiping out planets, weapons so advanced they defied imagination. But this was not technology. This was control. He exhaled slowly. There was no use in firing. No use in fighting a force that had already won without lifting a finger. But Zelvorin was not a coward. He would not retreat without understanding. His claws tightened into fists. "Send one final message." The communication officer nodded, waiting. The Admiral's voice was steady, controlled, but beneath the surface, there was a flicker of something unfamiliar. "Who are you?" A long pause followed. Then the voice responded. "We are humanity. This is our weakest warship." Zelvorin's breath caught in his throat. Weakest. If this was their weakest, then what did their strongest look like? For the first time in his life, the Zevran Admiral felt something he had never known before. Dread. And the rest of the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Admiral Zelvorin stood frozen on the bridge of his warship. The words still echoed in his mind. "We are humanity. This is our weakest warship." He had heard arrogance before. He had seen species boast about their strength, trying to bluff their way out of destruction. But this was not arrogance. This was certainty, a simple statement of fact, spoken as if the unknown voice did not even consider the Zevran fleet a threat. The bridge was silent, the officers staring at their admiral, waiting for his response. The usual confidence, the usual cruelty in his eyes, was gone. Then, the silence was shattered. "Sir," an officer yelled, panic in his voice. "The human ship is moving." Zelvorin's eyes snapped to the main screen. The human vessel had remained motionless for too long. The worst was yet to come. The Zevran fleet roared into action. Fighters swarmed like a furious hive, speeding toward the lone human warship. Battleships fired their energy cannons, unleashing beams of destruction that had reduced entire planets to dust in past conquests. Zelvorin stood tall on his command bridge, his mandibles tightening. This was no longer about strategy. It was about pride. About proving that the Zevran Dominion was still the most feared force in the galaxy. But deep inside, something gnawed at him. The human warship still wasn't moving. It remained exactly where it was, as if it didn't even consider the incoming fleet a threat. No defensive maneuvers, no panic, just cold, terrifying stillness. The first wave of Zevran fighters reached it, unleashing rapid energy blasts. The shots vanished before impact, erased from existence, as if they had never been fired. The bridge filled with confused voices. Direct hits confirmed, sir, but no effect. Shields, Vorin demanded. The sensor officer's claws trembled over his controls. Sir, there are no shields. Nothing is stopping the attacks. They're just gone. Before the Admiral could respond, the human ship moved. Not away, not into a defensive position, straight toward them. It accelerated at an impossible speed, weaving between Zevran warships like a phantom, its angular hull cutting through space with precision. A dozen ships tried to lock onto it, but their targeting systems failed, as if the ship wasn't even there. Then, without warning, the human vessel fired. One shot, a single thin beam of light. At first, it seemed insignificant, just a flicker in the darkness. But then, a Zevran battleship collapsed inward on itself, as if crushed by an invisible force. 1 second, it was there. The next, it had been folded into nothingness. Panic spread through the Zevran fleet. Impossible. One officer shrieked. Our ships, our defenses. Vorin slammed his fist against his console. Regroup. Keep firing. It didn't matter what this human ship was. It could not be invincible. Nothing was. But the moment he gave the order, something happened that froze the blood in his veins. The human warship spoke again. Enough. The word echoed across every Zevran warship, not just through their communication channels, but through every system. The lights dimmed. Consoles flickered. Engines stuttered. And then, the Zevran warships stopped moving. Every single ship in the fleet was frozen in place. Vorin's breath caught in his throat. What? What have they done? An officer's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, I think they've taken control. The realization hit the bridge like a hammer. The Zevran Dominion had spent centuries perfecting warfare. Their fleets had devastated civilizations, wiped out countless species, enslaved entire planets. And yet, in mere minutes, one human warship had brought them to their knees. The main screen flickered. The deep, calm voice returned. You attacked first. We gave you a chance to leave. Now you will listen. Vorin clenched his fists. He refused to submit. He was Zevran. He was a conqueror. But for the first time, he had no choice. And as he stood there, powerless, a chilling question crept into his mind. If this was just one ship, what would happen if more of them arrived? Vorin's claws dug into the metal of his command console. His fleet, his mighty, unconquerable fleet, was frozen in space, helpless before a single human warship. You will listen. The deep voice echoed across every ship, calm yet final. It was not a demand. It was a fact. Vorin's officers looked at him, their faces filled with fear and confusion. No one had ever stopped them before. No one had ever dared. But now, they were nothing more than prey waiting for the hunter's next move. The Admiral straightened his back, forcing steel into his voice. We do not submit, he growled. We are Zevran. We are the conquerors of the stars. Silence. Then the human voice responded. Not anymore. A deep hum filled the ship, something unseen, something powerful. The screens on the bridge flickered, and suddenly they weren't looking at their fleet anymore. They were looking at Earth. A blue planet, calm, distant, peaceful. But as the image shifted, something else appeared. Human warships. Thousands of them. They were not sleek or elegant like Zevran vessels. They were monstrous, armored, built for one purpose. War. The kind of war that ended civilizations. Vorin's mandibles tightened. You're bluffing. The human voice remained calm. Am I? Another image appeared. A battlefield, burning. Alien ships, Zevran ships, were being torn apart. Not by orbital bombardments. Not by weapons. By humans. They moved through fire and smoke, unbroken, unstoppable. Their soldiers carried weapons that shattered armor. Their machines crushed enemy lines like insects. And then, Vorin saw something that made his cold blood freeze. The humans were laughing. Not with joy, not with madness, with the thrill of battle. They did not fear war. They did not endure it. They loved it. Vorin's hands trembled. "You are warriors." "No," the human voice said. "We are survivors." The images vanished. Silence returned. But now, the meaning was clear. This was just one human warship, a weak one, according to them. And yet, it had already won. Vorin exhaled slowly. He had two choices: fight and be destroyed, or surrender and live. He turned to his officers. For the first time in his life, he saw it in their eyes. Not fear, not confusion. Defeat. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to speak. His voice was hollow, empty. "Stand down." The Zevran fleet powered down. Engines cooled. Weapons deactivated. The war that should have shaken the stars ended without a single battle. The human ship remained silent for a long moment. Then the voice spoke again. Wise choice. The Zevran fleet was released. Suddenly, their systems rebooted. Their ships regained control. But they did not move, because they all knew one truth now. The galaxy was no longer theirs to rule. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. Vorin stood on the bridge of his warship, his body frozen, his mind racing. "Stand down." The words had left his mouth, but they still felt like poison. For centuries, the Zevran Dominion had ruled the galaxy through fear. Their fleets crushed rebellions before they began. Their name alone made planets bow. But now, for the first time in their long, ruthless history, they were the ones afraid. The human warship had not fired again. It had not demanded surrender. It had simply waited, watching, letting the Zevran fleet realize the truth for themselves. Humanity did not need to destroy them. They had already won. The deep voice spoke one final time, filling every ship in the fleet. "Leave this place. Do not return." The message was clear. The Zevran Dominion would not be allowed to claim this sector. It did not belong to them anymore. Vorin's claws trembled. He had fought countless battles, watched enemies burn, crushed entire species under his command. And yet, nothing had ever felt like this. He turned to his officers, seeing the same realization in their eyes. "We retreat," he said bitterly. Now, the fleet turned away from the battlefield that never was. Engines roared to life, and one by one, the mighty warships of the Zevran Dominion fled. For the first time in history, they were running from an enemy. As they left, Vorin allowed himself one last look at the human warship. It did not chase them. It did not fire. It simply remained, like a silent guardian, watching over the stars it had claimed. A chill ran down the admiral's spine. If this was their weakest warship, then what kind of monsters had humanity truly become? The fleet vanished into hyperspace. The war that should have reshaped the galaxy had ended before it began. And across the stars, a single, terrifying truth spread like wildfire. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.